Hi, everyone, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. I hope everyone's having a good week so far. The weather is getting warmer, so that's exciting. We're getting closer and closer to summer, which is nice. It was a pretty fun weekend, NFL draft. I think a lot of people were pretty happy with how their teams did. So that was pretty good and exciting to watch. So I know that I miss football, and I'm excited to see the upcoming season and how some of these draft picks pan out come hopefully a regular, normal NFL season. So that should be exciting, and there's a lot of exciting things going on in sports right now overall. So that brings me to introducing my guest for this week. I'm very, very excited. She's involved with a lot of different types of things at NESN, and she does a very good job covering Boston sports. Lauren Campbell, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Gabby. Thanks so much for having me on today.
You're welcome. I'm excited to talk to you. I see a lot of your Twitter posts, and you definitely do a very good job of covering the different teams in the Boston area.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet.
You're welcome. So we just start off by just having you talk a little bit about how you got involved in working in sports and what your role at NESN entails?
Yeah, of course. So I've always known that I wanted to write. I wanted to cover sports ever since I was a little kid. So just I went to when I went to high school and figured out that I could do that. I started taking journalism classes, did that whole college experience of working on the newspaper, taking internships and all of that. And I was working as a website editor for a technology company just outside the Boston area. And then I started working for a media company that was just recapping Red Sox games from home, maybe hitting some breaking news, just very minimal stuff. But it was stuff that got me to write for sports because as much as I love writing, I don't know a lot about technology, especially when it comes to like projection and lighting and all that fancy stuff. But I was doing that. I was doing a ton of blogging for a couple of friends' blogs, and there's various blogs that I found, and just putting myself out there, like promoting myself on Twitter, promoting myself all over social media, and just kind of being obnoxious about putting my content out there. And as this media company grew, they started getting more exposure. We started taking on more responsibility, like tweeting about games. I started moving over to Bruins coverage as well as Red Sox coverage. And just really putting like 40 to 50 hours of work a week into this company, even though I was working full-time for another company. I was working part-time at my part-time job that I had all through college. And again, just like shamelessly promoting myself out there. And I was working some random job that I took because obviously this market is very difficult to break into. And there was a job posting at NESN for an opening for a content producer role. And I had a LinkedIn message from somebody who worked there saying they think I'd be a good fit. Here's the link to apply. Let's get this process started. So I applied. I was like, why not? Like, if you want to be a journalist, a sports journalist, you want to work in a big market. So I was like, this is perfect. So I applied, and a month later I got the job, and 3 years later I'm still there. So my technical title is content producer. We're covering Boston sports. We're covering national sports. A lot, obviously right now, a ton of Bruins stuff. Red Sox are obviously doing very well. And we're also hitting Celtics, the NFL draft, like you mentioned at the beginning of this episode. And we're just like so busy hitting stuff from all angles, covering stuff from all angles, and just making sure that our readers are getting exactly what they want.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like a really fun job. And I talked to a lot of people about this, and we all just came to the conclusion that working in sports is just such a rewarding industry to be in. Because if you're passionate about sports, I mean, this is something that I would be talking about just regularly with my friends at a bar or just hanging out just casually. Sports or something I would be talking about, or just watching games way I own, because that's just what I enjoy doing. So being able to make that your job and be able to constantly be covering sports, which is something that we're all passionate about, I think is just something really special.
It definitely is. And it's so much fun because, we're all sports fans. We all have the sport that we love watching. And now we're putting that passion into our work. And it's just fun to do it in all different ways. Like, we're all very creative people, and just to see our passion come through our writing and our social media presence is really, really cool. It's definitely very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for me, I mean, growing up in New England, I've just always been a big Boston sports fan. So those are the teams that, I watch the most and I'm the most passionate about talking about and covering. So that's why where you are being at NESN, that's the type of place where it's Boston sports are the primary sports that they cover. And it just must be so cool to be able to talk about those teams all the time, because it's a fun sports city for sure.
Definitely. And it certainly helps. I as well grew up in New England, grew up watching sports my whole life. So it certainly makes it a bit easier trying to cover the teams that so much about, that's pretty much ingrained into your brain. And it makes it more fun too. Cause like I said, like these are the teams we grew up watching, and now we get to bring the coverage to our readers and our viewers. So it's like a dream come true, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that you're great at it, and I enjoy your content. So definitely keep up what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But speaking of those teams that we like to cover, and there's a lot of fun things going on with those teams right now. And one of those teams in particular is the Bruins. I mean, they just clinched their playoff spot, and they're playing really, really well right now. And I've always told people, kind of as the season progressed, that this was going to be an interesting season for them, just because of just a lot of the unknowns that were coming with this season and some of the off-season moves that they made, and not really knowing how the younger players were going to kind of mesh with everybody, and just being a kind of a transition season, I would say. But when they're fully healthy, to me, I really feel like they can contend with anybody. And I just wanted to get your perspective on, now that they clinched their playoff spot, and based on what you've seen, what do you think are going to be some of the keys for them as they go into the postseason?
Yeah, I think it's kind of scary, because I didn't expect them to be as dominant as they were, and they look like a completely different team after the trade deadline. So, and to think that the last 10 games prior to this week, they weren't 100% healthy. They're still not 100% healthy, but they did a lot of this without Brandon Carlo. Matt Grzelcyk was constantly hurt, and a lot of the questions surrounding this year was the defense, because of Zdeno Chara and Torrey Krug going elsewhere. So just to see the blue line really click was awesome. And going into the playoffs, they're still, I think they're a complete team, but Bruce Cassidy said it perfect on Tuesday night, that they need to close things out better. They had their chance to win last night against the Devils, and the Devils are a team that on paper should easily be beaten by the Bruins, and the Bruins just could not beat them. They've struggled so much against them this season, and they finally figured it out. They clinched a playoff spot, but they still have those moments where I feel like they're getting beat out by teams. The other teams are just completely all over them. They're still a little pass happy. I think they've cleaned it up a little bit, but I feel like they can do one last pass, and they're definitely taking the puck to the net a little more, but they need to do that a lot more for the playoffs. I think they figured out their 5-on-5 scoring. Their secondary scoring seems to be okay. Finally, yes. And, part of the 5-on-5, that's why they got beat by Tampa Bay last year in the playoffs. And I feel like they figured it out to a point. And I also feel like they see that the core window of Bergeron and Marchand, the window it's not closed, but it's closing. And they're not getting any younger. They only have, it should be a crime that Produce Bergeron only has one Stanley Cup to his name right now. And I just feel like the Bruins really committed to winning now. And they proved that at the trade deadline. And if they can play the way that they've played the last 10 games, they close out these teams, they score first, they get ahead of them first, and they just one last pass and just skate to the puck. Like, don't let the other teams come up and beat you in a puck race, because that's going to lead to bad things. So I think if they clean those things up, I think they're going to go pretty far. I wouldn't be surprised to see them in a Stanley Cup final, but they have, with this alignment too, they have a lot of difficult tests ahead of them.
Yeah. I mean, you hit on this too. When they went out and got Taylor Hall, that's when I was like, okay, this seems like they really are invested in winning now, because they do realize that that window is closing with a couple of those veteran players. And if we want to win with them, it's kind of now or bust, essentially. And so I think Taylor Hall makes a difference. And him being here, I was so excited when they got him at the deadline, because I was like, this is the type of player that can really make a difference here. And I think that this is somebody that can help them take that leap from being, a good team to an actual real Stanley Cup contending team. And so I'm so happy that they added him. And it just shows me that, they do want to win now, because it was a little bit unclear when they made those moves in the offseason if they were trying to do more of a rebuild or if they were going for a championship now. And that didn't really become super clear to me until that trade deadline. And I think that now they're in the mindset of, we want to win a championship now. And it's a really exciting team to watch over these last couple weeks, especially. And they've been playing really well overall. But, like you said, I just, those games against the Devils where they struggled is just bothersome. Games that they should have won and they lost, because we'd be looking at a different record right now if they won those games that they should have won. And I mean, I'm happy that they are a playoff team still, and I'm happy that everything seems to be clicking more. But there's some tough teams that they're going to have to go up against. And I mean, the Islanders have just been a pain all year too. They just they could not seem to figure it out against them really all season either. So that was another frustrating one to watch as well.
Yeah, the Islanders, it's funny because I just feel like Barry Trotz has the Bruins number. Like, I just feel like if Barry Trotz is coaching a team, the Bruins are not going to beat them. And they're obviously an opponent to watch for. And this is looking like way down the line if the Bruins make it. It's just that West division is so unbelievably stacked. So just even when they're not healthy, they're still 100% teams, I feel like. And, the Bruins, they have this really good core. They have David Krejci. They have the top line there. They have Taylor Hall. They have Tuukka, and they have Swayman and Halak. And it's like on paper, they look like they should just coast to the Stanley Cup, but obviously all the other teams are so strong. And like we said earlier, just cleaning up those smaller things are going to make a huge difference, especially against a team like the Islanders. I think they've only beaten them once or twice this season, and they're a complete team. They're incredibly tough, and they're a pest. They never go away. And if they play them in the playoffs, the Bruins are really going to have to bring everything they have and just kind of leave it all on the ice in that first series.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the Islanders defense is great, and it's just they are a very solid team, but I was just hoping for them to just turn things around against the Islanders earlier in the season. Because I was like, if they play like this every game against them, and even they had one game against the Islanders where it went to overtime and they still lost, and the Islanders came back because they were losing, and they still found a way to win the game. And I was like, this is not promising, really. I was like, they need to figure out a way to beat this team, because this is a team that they can actually really compete with, both teams being fully healthy, but the Bruins just could not figure it out. And I think that once they started towards the end, maybe that's a little bit promising, but you're exactly right. That's going to be one of the teams in the earlier rounds to look out for. And it should be interesting to see if they can actually beat them this time around when it really matters, because during the regular season was just tough when they were playing them.
It was. And, the best thing about the playoffs is it's a clean slate for everything. The regular season stats don't matter. You can tell us all you want that the Islanders, outscored the Bruins 30-10. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but, that doesn't matter come playoffs. And I hope that the Bruins can just completely wash the regular season, not even think about the regular season, and just realize like the end goal at stake. And that's to get obviously the Stanley Cup and get Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, get them that second cup that they have been so close to getting that second one two other times. So close.
So that's the most frustrating thing about it. It's just they've come so close and just can't finish it. And it's like, can they get over that hump and finally finish the job that we've all been waiting for so long now to see them finish?
I know. And it's, I was talking about this earlier. It's like, what better time than to get another cup than on the 10-year anniversary of the 2011 Cup, and just kind of, putting 2019 behind us. We all know what happened in 2019. And 2013 doesn't hurt as much because I feel like the Blackhawks were just, nobody was beating the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
They were just such a strong dynasty then. But I just feel like the Bruins were a better team than the Blues in 2019. And it's, like we said, this window is closing. And if they don't win it this year, I don't know if there's going to be enough to come back, because you have the expiring contracts of Rask and Krejci. You don't know what's going to happen with Hall. He's obviously a rental right now, and he could come back long term. He could come back short term. Might not come back at all. So they're definitely in win now mode. It's just a matter of playing the win now on the ice.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have to wonder if they're going to re-sign Tuukka or not. I mean, that's a big question mark still. And I'm definitely very intrigued by Swayman, and I think he's going to be really, really good. And I think he's going to be the future of this team. And I like what I've seen from him a lot this year, but you really have to wonder if they're going to re-sign Tuukka. And I feel like a lot of that is going to have to do with what the end result is of this season.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of that lays in Tuukka's hands. I think they're going to approach it like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to retire? Do you want to take some time off? Do you want to not decide right now? I think this is really all in Tuukka's hands. And I definitely think that winning or not winning the Stanley Cup certainly will play a factor in it. I feel like, I'm not these athletes, but I still feel like, that's why Zdeno Chara hasn't retired yet. Maybe he would have retired in 2019 if they won the Cup then. But, there's so much uncertainty surrounding this team. And I do feel like we won't know. We're not going to know until well into the summer regardless. But you almost have a better idea of, will Tuukka come back? Will they re-sign David Krejci? Again, what will they do with Taylor Hall? Because if David Krejci doesn't come back, or if he, goes somewhere, it doesn't sound like he wants to retire, but, or if David Krejci says, I want to come back and I want to play with the Bruins, I feel like you have to re-sign Taylor Hall because he's so rejuvenated with him on that line with him. So I feel like there's as much excitement as there is going into this postseason. There's still so much uncertainty in the future. And I know us Boston fans don't like that uncertainty. We are constantly, always and constantly in like win now mode. And now that the Bruins, the Celtics are fine, but they have their own slew of issues, where I feel like the Bruins and the Red Sox are the two most exciting teams right now, that the Bruins need to pretty much do everything they can to win this cup and just still continue to be as exciting as they have been.
Yeah, and if they don't win the cup this season, will you see it as a disappointing season overall? Because I've talked to some people about this, and I know that there's mixed feelings on this, because some people are like, well, not really, because it was a weird season and not like a regular season. But at the same time, others are like, yeah, it would be disappointing because they've done so much now to get so far, and if they once again can't finish it, then it would be super disappointing. And I'm more on that side of like, it will kind of feel like a disappointment to me if they don't win it all. And obviously everybody would be disappointed regardless if they don't win it all, but more of kind of would it be seen as, it's okay, this wasn't a regular season anyway, so we can just if this was a regular season, maybe they would have, or would it be more of like, this was the year that they should have won?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm kind of torn on it. I feel like I'm leaning more toward that it would be a disappointment because of the trade deadline moves. I feel like you don't make those kind of moves unless you want to win, unless obviously the end goal always is to win the Stanley Cup. But, they're not the New Jersey Devils. They're not the Buffalo Sabres, where they know they're not going to compete for the cup this year. They're in win now mode. They've been a playoff team for 5 straight seasons. They've been a playoff team for so long. And to not finish it this season, when you gave Krejci his wingers, when you have, you have a really nice tandem of Halak and Tuukka there, but also you have Swayman and Vladar, who's done really well for himself too. Mm-hmm. You have a lot to be optimistic about in the future, but you also have the pieces to win now, where I feel like Stanley Cup or bust is almost my mindset, just because of how everyone's performing. And Marchand's having a career year. He's leading the team in goals, points, and assists. Pastrnak, he's cooled off a little bit, but he did have that hip injury. And I just feel like, Andre Kasha got hurt in the second game of the season. And not a knock on Kasha by any means, but I feel like they haven't really missed a beat because they've been able to fill in those holes nicely. Their depth has been tested. They feel like they know what their blue line pairings are. And to not make it to the Stanley Cup, I feel like would be a disappointment. If they get there, then okay, that's a different story. But I'm leaning more toward that. If there's no Stanley Cup championship this season, it's going to be a little bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, and it's not like there's really any teams that they would face along the way to get to the Stanley Cup that are like surmountably better than them. You know what I mean? Like they really are right in the mix with any of those other teams that they would see along the way to the Stanley Cup. So from that perspective, it's like, yeah, realistically, they can compete with any of these teams. And as long as everybody stays healthy and they make sure that they're still playing good hockey all around, I really feel like any of these other teams that you look at that they could face on their way to the Stanley Cup final, I really think are teams that they can actually beat and contend with. So that's the other thing. It's like, it's not like there's one team that stands out to me that's like, oh, they definitely can't beat this team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's really interesting too because, in a regular season, in a non-COVID season, the Bruins, I mean, all teams play almost everybody. You make those West Coast trips, you make the long road trips. This year, save for the North Division, didn't really have that. So after you get out of your division round playoffs, I feel like nobody is above anybody because nobody's played each other. The Bruins haven't played anybody from the West, and that's a strong, like I said, it's a very stacked division, but the West also hasn't played anybody from the East. So I feel like nobody's really at an advantage there. And this could really be one of the more exciting playoffs we've seen since, I don't know, 2019 was a really good playoff run, but this could be this is really fixing to be an exciting playoff season because these teams don't really know what they're getting themselves into once they get out of their own division playoff round.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that too, that this is going to be a super exciting playoffs. Yeah, because teams don't have exposure to those other teams outside of their division. So it's like you're going to get out of that and start playing teams that you haven't seen all season. And the type of hockey that we see might be a lot different, and adjustments are going to need to be made that you haven't necessarily had to make all season because you're playing different teams that you haven't seen at all. And it was definitely strange not playing any of the Canadian teams or anything this year. That was definitely weird to experience. And so when you go and you face these teams that you haven't seen once all season, it's like you don't know exactly what they're going to bring to the table. So you have to be prepared for pretty much anything. And I think that's going to make it really interesting. And I think there could be some surprises this year in the postseason because of that.
Definitely. And I think, you said it best that there will be some surprises because these teams haven't played each other. These teams, obviously, they're some of the best players in the world. And a team that comes to mind is the Avalanche. They're just constantly good. They're stacked. They have the depth. I just think they're always winning. And as good as they are, they don't know how fast another team is. They don't know. They haven't seen, Jeremy Swayman, Tuukka Rask. They haven't seen other blue lines. And same with the Bruins too. Like they haven't played all these goalies this year. And I just feel like every round will probably feel like a Stanley Cup final. I feel like it'll feel like Game 7. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be energy no matter what the capacity crowd is by that time that rolls around. And they're going to have to, all the teams are going to have to be creative in finding ways to, they have to watch film, of course. They're going to figure out, who best matchups for forwards and the blue lines. But again, there might be a lot of switches there because they haven't seen these guys. So there might be a lot of blue line pairings that are different, maybe the forward groups going up against some of the top lines and on another team. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a lot of strategy. I think there'll be a lot more strategy this year than there has been in years past, simply because just the lack of playing against these other teams.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. But I think that I think we covered a lot of it. I think the Bruins have the fight and the motivation to really go out there and win games and just stay in it and not give up. And they had that mentality approaching a lot of games this year, and we could see it, that they, at the beginning of the season, they came from behind and won a lot of games. And it just showed to me that they just felt like they were never out. And I think that that's a great mindset to have when you go into the playoffs, that it's like, we're here and we can compete with these teams. And if they can have that mindset for the whole postseason, I think that we can definitely see some success from them.
Oh, for sure. I think that was one of the most exciting things about the regular season is the Bruins could go down 3-0 and I never felt worried. It was just like, oh, like they're going to come back in the third. And even though that's not sustainable, we obviously saw that throughout the season. I never felt like, even when they couldn't come back, that they were never out of the game. And, not to bring up 2019 again, but once they went down to the Blues, I was like, I just feel like there's no coming back, even though they were only down 1-0. But I was like, I don't like that they're down first. But now if they go down 1-0, 2-0, I don't really have that same worry. I just feel like, they know what to do. They're never out of the game. And that's going to make for even more exciting playoff games down the stretch.
Yeah, and that was a weird series too. That 2019 series, it was just like they alternated winning games the whole time, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about this pattern, because if this continues like this, then this is not going to end in our favor.
And I'm very like superstitious kind of with patterns where I'm like, oh no, like no home team is won. Oh, that's not good. Or like the alternating, I was like, oh, if they switch off wins, the Bruins aren't going to win. So even though obviously that has nothing to do with the outcome, I still noticed stuff like that too. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I definitely do. When I'm watching games, I think about that stuff a lot, and I'm like, oh no, like this could not end well for us. But yeah, I'm happy with what they put together overall in the regular season, and just looking back on everything, and just obviously the unknowns that came with this season originally. It's just I look back and I'm pretty happy with what they did. So I'm excited to see how they do this postseason, and just hope that they can get the job done, because that's what we're all waiting for. And everybody's, I mean, they're well overdue, those couple players. So it should be exciting.
It should be. I think it's going to be a fight to the end. Like no matter where the Bruins end up, it's going to be a dogfight, and it's going to be intense. It's going to be fast, and like you said, hopefully they can get the job done and get those core players what they deserve, and also what the fans deserve. I think they've been patient enough through, God forbid, the last 10 years. But
yeah, I would say that too. The fans have definitely been very patient and have had frustrating moments, but we're all still here, and we're all just waiting for that championship.
Oh, let's go.
I know. Well, there's another team in Boston that's been very, very exciting too, and that is our Red Sox. And before the season started, I think there were many, many people out there that thought the Red Sox would not be a good team this year. And I was one of those people that tried to say that I thought that they really could be a good team this year, and that they would surprise people, and that they could actually be in contention for a playoff spot. And so far, that's all proving to be true overall. And I very much have been pleased overall with what I've seen from them. I think there's obviously still some holes that need to be addressed if they want to actually really contend this year. But I think overall what they have right now is a team that can sustain a level of success all season.
Yeah, I think they've surprised a lot of people out of the gate. I mean, I don't know if anybody expected them to not only have the best record in the majors and the AL too. So I think that, losing who they did, trading who they have, and just kind of almost rebuilding. I don't know if I really want to call it a complete rebuild, but just to kind of, obviously after 2019 was terrible, 2020 was painful. People expectations were low, and rightfully so. I mean, you're also going into the season without Chris Sale. So that's a huge question mark right there, especially when pitching has been an issue for the last few seasons. But, I think you said it perfect. There's so much to be excited about, but there's still certainly room for improvement. I mean, they needed 11 runs to beat a team last night that's batting like 192 going into last night's game, or 195, something like that.
So
yeah, bad. That game was too close for comfort. But, I think when you're looking at the rotation, Erod's doing everything he can. He's 4-0 or 4-1. He's obviously, there's a lot of questions with him with his COVID and myocarditis. Nick Pivetta is proving to be pretty sustainable. Garrett Richards found his coat, and now he's turned things around here. And Evaldi looks really good. Of course, it's still early. You know, it's only May. We know a lot can happen, especially in a very long baseball season. So I think that the offense, I think it's going to click. We've seen nights where it just, last night, I mean, put up 11 runs, but then, the pitching, the bullpen, a lot of questions around Austin Bryce. Like, what is he going to figure this out? How much longer does he have? Franchi Cordero, same thing. Is he going to go into AAA? Are they going to be patient with him? But I think what's my favorite part about this team is they're 18-12, 18-13 right now, something like that. And they're not fully healthy. I mean, you're still missing Chris Sale. Ryan Brazier is not very missed right now, I think, just because the bullpen's okay and he didn't really have the great season. But Matt Barnes, whoever thought that he would have a 0 ERA in the month of April. Seriously. And I think a lot of people realize the job that Alex Cora does, but I feel like they maybe didn't realize how much the players really hear him and just respond to him. I think he's a huge players coach. I think he really talks to these players and he hears these players. And even though he sometimes makes these really weird in-game decisions that we've seen, I just feel like being able to connect with your players the way he does is so rare. And I think that's part of their success. Obviously, Alex Cora isn't playing, but when you had the offense they did last year, and obviously, Chris Sale and Erod, losing them last year wasn't ideal, but they still had a good offense and it didn't really show. So I think Alex Cora is a huge X factor in this. And he said it best in one of his post-game availabilities that if we play 500 baseball, or if we win 17 games every month, we're in that conversation. And everyone knows that's the World Series conversation. But I feel like this team is very reminiscent of 2018. They're having fun. They're holding themselves accountable. And again, they're never really out of games. So it's kind of concerning when they're up a lot of runs and they can't hold the lead. But again, it's early. I think there's a lot more to be excited about than there is to be concerned about. And, Chris Sale's going to come back this summer. When, we don't really know. I feel like they shouldn't rush him, especially if this is how they're going to play. They really need to ease him back in, especially if they make it to the playoffs. I know that's months down the road, but there's a lot to like about this Red Sox team. I think they're likable. I think they're fun. And I think the players themselves are having fun again, which we did not see at all last year.
Yeah, last year was rough. Last year was a tough season all around to watch. And I just was, I didn't want to put too much weight on last year when it came to just analyzing the team going into this season, because I was like, it was a weird season. There was not enough games to play where I just can't put all of my weight and my evaluation on this season into last year. And you said a lot of the things that I was saying too, and I completely agree with the Alex Cora sentiment. I think that having a manager like that makes a huge difference, and somebody that really is a player's coach and knows how to connect with every single person on the team. And you don't see that in every manager. And we're seeing more and more, and it's becoming more and more clear how much of a difference he really makes. And I think last year not having him was something that did hurt them. And I think having a manager like that really understands all of these players is just super important. And I think that their success, I do credit a good portion of their success to him and just their mentality approaching games, and even their faces in the dugout every time they lose a game. Their faces look like they just lost Game 7 of the World Series. And that in itself, to me, just shows the type of mentality and approach that this team has. They hate losing games, and they come in and they just are like, after they lose, maybe they'll lose a game or two. And when they lost 2 in a row against the Rangers was a little disappointing because that was a series they probably should have won. Yeah. But even just those types of examples, it's like they come back and they're like, no way, we're not going to lose another game now after this. And I think that first series of the season, getting swept by the Orioles, that obviously fueled a huge fire in this team that was like, we're better than this. Like, we're going to be a team that people aren't going to sleep on, because I know the players in the offseason were saying, don't sleep on us this year, which I was saying too. And starting with bringing Alex Cora back. And I was like, okay, bringing Alex Cora back with the offense that they have, when we do know that they have a talented offense. that's already going to make a difference. And then on the pitching, from the pitching standpoint, they're bringing some key pitchers back. But yeah, you have to wonder what's going to happen with people like Austin Rice, because it was not on the whole bullpen last night that giving up those runs. It was pretty much on him, because he gave up all of those runs in that inning, and then the Red Sox had to score more to get insurance to cover up the fact that that Pivetta had only given up 3 runs, and then all of a sudden it's an 8-7 game, and the Red Sox need to make up for that. And so that will happen when he was pitching. So it's not sustainable to score 11 runs every night. And I'm happy that they were able to do that last night, and they attacked early, and they scored some big runs in those early innings, which I think made a big difference. But obviously you can't rely on that every night. So it's, obviously we have to wonder what's going to happen as it gets closer and closer to the trade deadline, who they would consider moving down to AAA, or who they would maybe consider trading for more pieces, because I think that they definitely can contend for a wild card spot right now. But I think that if they make a couple key adjustments, they can be even better than that.
Oh yeah, they're kind of like the Bruins. Like they're not that far off from being a World Series contending team. And Austin Bryce obviously is probably the biggest question mark right now. Just how are you going to use him? Are you only going to use him in non-high leverage situations, like when the game is 20-2? Is that when he's only going to get used? And then that's like, it's not the best for him either, because then he never gets used, and then they have no choice but to put him in because it's a long bullpen day or something, and he's the only one available. So you don't want to put him in a situation where he'll fail. Like, you want to set him up for success, and I totally get that, but he's really the only one. Ottavino is kind of all over the place. I feel like when he's on though. But like he's been really, he started off kind of rough, but like I said, when he's on, he's nasty and he's almost unhittable. So I feel like they're not far off, but obviously the pitching, as it's been the last few seasons, is still kind of in question there. And I don't want to write off Austin Bryce because we are a month into the season, but we do have a big enough sample size. It's not like we have 2 appearances, Yeah. So he's definitely on thin ice, but we also know that Alex Cora loves giving these people chances. We saw it with Brazier. We even saw it with Barnes last year. So not that was Alex Cora's team, but we saw Barnes in 2019 too, and Brazier in 2019 just constantly always being on the mound. And we're like, why? And I'm not saying that Austin Bryce is going to turn it around like Matt Barnes did, but there are adjustments to make when you're a pitcher, and there's the mechanics, the delivery, and your control and command. So maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe he's just not as good as he's been, and that's fine too. But you can't be putting him in games with the game on the line. I certainly don't trust him. It's very nerve-wracking when he comes in, but I trust Alex Cora. Obviously, I'm not a major league manager, and I feel like he always has the best interest of this team, and he's going to put who he thinks in to set them up for success. But tonight, going into tonight's game, if he can stay away from Austin Bryce, that would be really nice, because I would just like a game where I'm really not stressing too much and just kind of being able to watch it and relax. But who knows? I mean, it's Boston sports. So I don't know if we can ever really relax watching a game.
No, I think everybody's always on the edge of their seats during a game. But yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings on Ottavino. The walks really kill me. I mean, he does walk a lot of hitters, and a lot of times it ends up coming back to haunt him, is the problem. I think overall he's a pretty solid pitcher, and 2020 was not a great season for him, but 2020 wasn't a great season for a lot of people. I mean, JD Martinez falls into that category too, and look what he's done this year. Right. So I think I kind of just was like, okay, 2020, let's just not consider that year. 2019 with the Yankees, he had a really good year though. And I was like, if we can get that out of Vino or close to that, then that's going to be a really, really good guy to have coming out of this bullpen. And I think if he can just stay more consistent, then he could be a really, really good, like, eighth inning type of guy being the bridge to Matt Barnes. But the problem is going to be that consistency with him because he's kind of been all over the place, like you said. And when he comes in and he's on point, he pretty much is unhittable. And that's the type of guy that I would like to see more times than I'm seeing now.
Yeah.
But then Matt Barnes, I mean, I think he's surprised all of us. When I found out that he was going to be the closer, that really, really worried me because I know that feeling of bringing Matt Barnes into a game when they're up by a run or something and there's base runners there. And that hasn't always worked out in our favor with him coming into games. And I was like, he's not a real closer. I don't know if this is how this is going to work because, you know, the Red Sox haven't had a real closer since Kimbrel. So I was like, well, this is okay. Like, I guess I trust Cora. We'll see how this goes. But he's been fantastic in the closing spot. If we can get that Matt Barnes closing games all season, then I'll call that a success because this is somebody that nobody expected to be doing what he's doing in that role. And I enjoy watching him come into games. And you know, last night they were up by 4 runs in the ninth, thanks to Kike hitting that home run. Because even when it was 10-7, that still kind of scared me because I was like, this still seems to me like it's not enough of leeway right now to win this game. And Kike getting that extra insurance run, I was like, yeah, we needed that majorly because that to me, I was like, okay, we should win this game now. But even when it is the ninth inning and they're up by a run or two, I'm really starting to have that confidence in Barnes more and more when he comes in that situation. I'll be like, okay, yeah, he's probably going to close out this game. You know, like I trust that he will. And even when he came in the 8th inning last night and there were people on the bases and he got that double play to end the 8th inning, I was like, yeah, this is what we need. I was like, this is what we need all season from him.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as dominant as he's been this season, I still get really nervous when he comes in. Just, you know, obviously from last year was not good. But, you know, if you told me that Matt Barnes was going to be AL reliever of the month for April, if you told me that he wasn't going to allow an earned run, and that he was going to be in these high leverage situations, I would have been like, you are crazy. You need to go and just like drink some water and have a rest because that's just silly. And I mean, in these situations, I love being proven wrong about somebody's statistics and somebody's projections about what they're going to be. Because if you told me Matt Barnes was going to be saving games and, you know, coming in the 8th to clean up Austin Bryce's mess, I would have think it was really the other way around. You know, Matt Barnes was always putting people on. And to be able to trust him in those situations, you know, clean up the mess, get those crucial 2 outs, get out of the inning. And, you know, even though those runs wouldn't be charged to him, he's still responsible for giving them up at the end of the day. But Matt Barnes has been probably the biggest surprise to me. I think we all knew JD Martinez was going to turn it around. Yeah. And Matt Barnes has just been lights out. And that's not something I expected at all. Like, I expected him to be fine, but I did not expect him to be dominant.
Yeah, me either at all. I was like, okay, I mean, Matt Barnes is, you know, he'll be fine. He'll be decent. Like, he'll get the job done sometimes, and other times he'll be the Matt Barnes that is painful to watch. Yep. But I did not expect that Matt Barnes to be pretty much non-existent this year. And that's really exciting. And I also am really excited about Garrett Whitlock and his future because this kid, I mean, he just gave up his first run of the season against the Rangers, and he's still so young, and it's like being able to snag somebody like that in the Rule 5 draft. I mean, I'm amazed still that we were able to pull that off because this kid is so talented and he still has so much ahead of him, and having him as a solid bullpen piece is really just, I think that's a really contributing factor to their success in a lot of these games too, because they'll bring him in and he'll come in and he'll pitch 2 innings and they'll both be clean. And it's like, all of a sudden it's the 8th inning and it's like, okay, we're in pretty good shape now.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing about Whitlock is that he's still so young. Like, if he's only going to get better, like he's setting himself up to get paid, and good for him. I mean, like you said, you get him out of the Rule 5 draft for really nothing. And he's really been such an X factor this year. Like you said, just gave up his first run of the season the other day. Eventually that was going to happen, but he had a really good run there. And he's somebody who I trust too. Like, you go into those high leverage situations, he's really I don't want to say he's figured it out because I don't really know much about him going into this season, but he seems very confident on the mound. Seems like he's been doing this his whole life, and just he's ready to be called upon when the time comes. Like, he's not backing down. He's not afraid to attack hitters. And that's really, really awesome to see, especially for somebody who's Rule 5 draft pick, pretty young. And just being in these high leverage situations is very, very good for him, especially on a team like the Red Sox. And just, I mean, I've never really looked so much into like a Rule 5 draft before until Garrett Whitlock, where I was like, I need to like do a deep dive on this Rule 5 thing because this is awesome. Like, we got this guy. And now he fits right in. He's a perfect bullpen piece. And not that he was like the missing link last year in 2019, but he's certainly a very welcome addition and somebody that's going to set the Red Sox apart from, another close team. Like, it comes down to pitching a lot of the times. And if you can have that one certain piece, you're golden. And I feel like Whitlock they're so close to having a complete bullpen, and Whitlock is helping that. They just need one or two more pieces, but he's been such a fun surprise, absolutely dominant on the mound, constantly, just like I said, very confident and almost unhittable. So I definitely like what I've seen from him. I think the Red Sox have something very good in him, and hopefully he just continues this and stays healthy.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, obviously, like you said before, it's still only May, so there's still so much of the season left. But if they can maintain this relative level of consistency overall, I think that's really good, because we've seen them. The only really bad series after the Orioles series they had was the one against the Rangers. I mean, that's the only other series they've lost this season so far. And that's really promising, because that shows that even when they're playing good teams, they really can compete with good teams. And I think it's the whole division intrigues me, because pretty much everybody besides Baltimore, I think genuinely could win the division. And I think that there's just a lot of talent in the division overall. And I knew that at some point other teams in the division were going to start to figure things out, because the Red Sox were the only team in the division that had a good start to the season. And then, kind of Baltimore to an extent, but I still obviously wasn't taking that seriously. But the other teams, I was like, yeah, I mean, Toronto is no joke this year. The Yankees are going to be the Yankees, and the Rays are still going to be in the mix. So I think by June, I think that the standings could be a little bit different than they are now. But I think that it's going to be really, really close all season. And I think it's going to be a race between those four teams all season. So if they can do things like sweeping the Tampa Bay Rays, which was key, like if they can win a lot of those interdivision matchups, that's going to be really important down the stretch. Because if you can really beat teams like the Blue Jays and the Rays, then that's really promising in terms of your division placement down the road. And obviously I didn't want the Yankees to start figuring things out, and I was enjoying seeing them in last place and seeing them losing all these games at the beginning. But I was like, just being realistic, this is too talented of a team to just be in this slump all season. And so, I mean, they're coming now, and I'm definitely a little bit concerned about that. But I don't think that the Red Sox are worse than any of those teams in the division. And I think that was the thought that people had before the season started, was that it was going to be like the Orioles at the bottom and then the Red Sox in fourth, like maybe hitting 500, like maybe being a little under, and then the other three teams above them. But the Red Sox are really showing that they can compete with those teams, and that they are the type of team that really can come out on any given night and beat any good team. And their attitudes and the way that they approach games, I think, is something that's unique that you don't find in other teams either, because they just approach every game with we're not out of it. Like we still can win this game. And that's why when they come from behind and win games, it's so exciting, because it's like they battle it out till the end, even if they're losing.
Yeah, they really do. And as much as I enjoyed seeing the Yankees struggle and be in last place too, it's also really fun for the rivalry when both teams are at their best and both teams are competitive. And one of my best friends is a Yankees fan, so it's a lot more fun when we can chirp each other in a competitive season. And I think this is a year where the division really could come down to the last game of the season. Could really depend. Like, I don't know if the division, I mean, again, we're only in May, but I don't know, stating right now, that if the AL East division is going to be a runaway. And obviously right now it looks like the Red Sox could clinch it down the stretch if it were to stay this way. We all know there are 130 games left, so we got plenty of time. But I think the Yankees are going to figure it out. I think it's going to be a battle for first. It's going to flip-flop a lot all season. And unless there's any kind of like major injury or something, the Blue Jays or the Rays or any team just kind of all of a sudden can't figure it out anymore, I think this division is going to be really, really competitive. It's going to come down to late August, early September games just to figure out who's going to win this division. And it's going to be a battle until the end. I feel like, these wild card spots are going to go to good teams, and there's still going to be good teams left out. But I mean, a lot of the divisions are still strong, but I feel like the AL East is just like, there's no set winner. There's no like, oh, this team's definitely going to run away with it. Especially if this is how it's going to go the first month, if this is how the next 5 months are going to go, it's going to be really, really tough. It's going to be hard for any team to pull away in a substantial lead, be comfortable in that top spot in the AL East. I think people are sleeping on the Blue Jays a little bit. I think, like you said, the Rays are going to be there. The Yankees, we're going to figure it out soon enough. And if they all continue this play throughout the season, oh boy, it's going to be a dogfight till the very end.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be one of the most fun divisions to watch the rest of the season because you have all this talent in the division. And I agree with you about Toronto. I think a lot of people are sleeping on them a little bit and not really giving them enough credit right now, but that they're going to be good for a while because there's a lot of young talent over there, and they're continuing to just grow their roster and just continue to build up. So that's going to be a team that going forward, not past this year, is going to be a team to watch out for because they're going to be good for a while because they have something good going on over there. And Tampa Bay just always finds a way to be in the mix. And even though nobody's quite sure or understanding of their process, they always just find a way to make it work. And so that's going to be fun. And I mean, my dad's a Yankees fan, so we enjoy going back and forth with each other. And it is more fun when both teams are good because you go into those games, those rivalry games, and there's a lot more hype to those games when both teams are good, as opposed to one team being pretty bad, because then it's like, oh, this series won't be as exciting because we probably already know the outcome of it. But if the Red Sox continue playing the way that they're playing, those Red Sox-Yankees matchups down the stretch are going to be super fun.
It is. And it's certainly disappointing now that we don't get Red Sox Yankees until June. I would love to have a Yankee series like right now or even this month. But I think it makes it more fun too. It makes it, there will be a little deeper into the season. We'll have a little better idea of the standings at that point. And, then by June, you have to count down to the All-Star break. So then it's, what the team's going to the All-Star break. Are they going to have this momentum? What's going to happen? So certainly going to be interesting to see, but I love when all the teams are competitive. It makes it more fun. As much as I love when the Yankees struggle, it's still a lot more fun for them to be healthy and for the Red Sox to be healthy and a good team. And when they go at each other, because it's the rivalry, it's MLB's rivalry, and it's not fun when one team is struggling. So just to see the Yankees kind of come back and figure it out, and the Red Sox continuing to play good baseball, that's going to be a really, really fun series. And it could be tough. It could get ugly. It could get really, really bad for both teams, but I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be really exciting to see how the rest of the season goes because the Red Sox are so fun to watch this year again, because we couldn't say that last year. And it's going to be exciting, and I'm fascinated, and it's going to be fun to just watch how the rest of this division plays out and how the Red Sox do, and just what happens with the rest of the season. So that's going to be fun. And go Bruins. The hockey postseason is definitely going to be fun too. So we'll see what happens there. But I really appreciate you coming on the show today and joining me and talking some Boston sports. They're the most fun teams to talk about. Maybe a biased opinion, but yeah, definitely appreciate you joining me. And everybody, I always appreciate you tuning in. You know where to find Boston Balling. It's on all podcast streaming platforms and social media. So everybody have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.